This is Faisal Khan for Lights Out in association with Shamrock Boxing, and this is podcast 11 of the Lights Out Boxing podcast, and I'm delighted to be joined by fellow Lights Out team members Asif Khan and Mohsin Gulsher, aka Ron. How's it going, boys?
You doing all right?
Good.
Yeah, very good. Good to see you guys. Hopefully you had a good Eid. Before we get started, let's just remind the viewers out there, if they haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, like and comment. And of course, don't forget to check us out on all the social media platforms. You'll see below the screen where all of our social media links are. And check out the previous uploads. Don't forget to check out our latest interview with former heavyweight champion of the world, Lemon Brewster. And check out the last episode of Boxing Talk with the Sugar Man, Shane Mosley Jr. Podcast 11, we're just going to have to round it up a bit of a boxing update, really. Talk about the current topics in boxing. Starting off with Wilder Fury 3. Now, earlier today, I was listening to Bob Arum's interview with Talk Sport, and that fight is not going to take place in America now. It was scheduled to take place in America, but of course, due to the coronavirus situation, that fight is now going to be held outside of the US. I'll just read a quick quote from Bob Arum's interview. We are looking elsewhere at places where they've had very little coronavirus situations, where it is not considered to be a problem right now. We are exploring the possibility of Macau, China, and of course a big venue in Australia, which seems to have the coronavirus under control. Now, them three...
Sorry, did you say China?
Yeah, which is why I was like, yeah. I'm not going to talk too much about China and the coronavirus, but the big fact in this is that China has become the favorite destination for Wilder versus Fury 3. Open question to you guys. What do you make of the three likely destinations in Macau, China, and down under in Australia?
I mean, I'd like the fight to be in UK. You know, Wilder's had it in his backyard twice now. I mean, just from a British perspective, you know, yeah, I mean, I don't understand. I think it's money talks, really. China, there's a lot of money there. They want a piece of the pie. Like Saudis had their bit of action. Dubai has probably done. They will be doing events as well in the future. But a bit disappointed. I don't really know much about the boxing scene and, you know, the fanfare in America, in China. They've had some potential heavyweights, but Australia, it makes sense there because the corona's not as as it has been here. They've had it a lot more under control, so it makes sense. At least in Australia, you'll have people watching it in a live stadium potentially.
Yeah, that's. I think that's the main point, isn't it? I think which country can start staging these events with live crowds? That's. I mean, when you think about it, the live gate must be worth millions, for these events. So I guess where the crowd's going to be at first, and yeah, Australia, probably China. These are the countries that are probably ahead of us at the time, especially America and the UK in terms of staging events in front of crowds.
The biggest fight in Australia they've had was Manny Pacquiao when he fought against Jeff Horn, and that was quite very popular at the time. So, but just imagine a Deontay Wilder versus Fury there. That would really light up the place.
I said a few weeks ago that the best thing in this Wilder-free venue situation is that they need to wait for the coronavirus situation to sort of die down, and either it has to happen in America but I agree with Ron. I think it's fair to Tyson Fury that this fight happens in the UK, but with it happening in the UK, it's in limbo because we don't know when we're going to be able to get crowds back into sporting events. I mean, we're seeing with the football slowly that it's going to be behind closed doors. We've seen with the German Bundesliga as well, and with other sports, it's all going to be behind closed doors for quite a while. But I really do feel that this is a fight that either has to be in America or the UK. I think it's massive if it comes to the UK. I think it's definitely worthy of Wembley.
It'll never come to you know what? Yeah, them days. I think they're gone. You know, like, you look at the fighters themselves. Look at Fury. He goes to America to fight. You know, look at what he was, what he is. He's a heavyweight world champion. Surely he has that pull to have these kind of big fights in the UK. But these guys go where the money is, and yeah, it'd be great to fight in front of 90,000 fans and that. But look, people want to go and conquer America. They want to go and have these fights in Madison Square Garden rather than Wembley. So yeah, it'd be really nice to see it in the UK. But I don't think Tyson Fury will fight in the UK again. Even when he fights AJ, I don't even think that would be in the UK.
Do you not think it's like the actual defending champion should have the final say or where the venue should be? Just because he is strictly the defending champion. And because you got to remember, Fury's fought in Wilder's backyard twice. You know, it's more or less been on Wilder's say-so. He has been like the B-side, but now you have to look at that. Fury holds the marbles. He is the defending champion. Do you not think for the third time around that Tyson Fury should have the say where the venue should be?
I mean, just a quick question on that. When Klitschko and Fury were going to have that rematch, that was going to take place in the UK, right?
Manchester.
Yeah, Manchester. So, yeah, that would make sense. You know, a home and a away fixture, as you want to call it. But money talks, as Asif is probably got it right there.
That current Wilder Fury free situation. I mean, I'm hearing 1 minute Wilder's injured, 1 minute he's going to take step aside money for the Fury AJ fight to happen, and obviously following Tyson Fury on social media, he said he wouldn't even pay Wilder 10 grand to step aside. He wants the third fight. He wants to get Wilder out of the way and then perhaps focus on the fight with Anthony Joshua, maybe even the Dillian Whyte fight. But we'll stick on the topic with Bob Arum. More news coming out of that interview. He's said that he's going to put on 15 boxing events between June and July with 5 fights on each card, 2 or 3 shows a week. And this is going to be held in Las Vegas. Now, Asif, Bob Arum bringing boxing back, obviously behind closed doors, 2 or 3 boxing shows a week, 15 boxing events between June and July. What do you make of it?
It's got to be done, hasn't it? I mean, we've got past the peak of this epidemic, and people, we're all looking at the major sporting events to start taking place now. Football, UFC, although behind closed doors, they're all leading the way. So boxing's in a perfect position when you look at it, because they can kind of learn off the other sports. So fighters have to get paid, promoters have to put on events, and I think we'll start seeing a lot of these behind closed door events now.
There's going to be a lot of regulations as well taken, especially with testing for the coronavirus and keeping fighters out of harm's way. It's a very, very good interview that he did with Adam Catterall and Gareth A. Davis, which was on TalkSport earlier on. Ron, how excited are you to see these shows coming back? And of course, if you look at some of the names he's mentioned, like Shakur Stevenson, and of course there's that Tefimo Lopez and Vasyl Lomachenko fight that might fit into that schedule as well.
Yeah, I mean, very much so. I'm just like any other fan. We've been starved of boxing, and there's only so much of YouTube, fights that that have happened in the past that we can watch until we want our next fix. We want answers to questions. Who win in that third fight? What would how would Joshua get on against Pulev? In the lightweight division, you got Tefimo Lopez, who was supposed to be fighting Lomachenko. Was that happening this week or next week or something?
It was, yeah.
There was an exciting matchup with Derek Chisora against Usyk. How would he fare there? I mean, we just want to get the show rolling. We're all fans here. We all want to see the drama unfold.
Speaking,
as long as it's done. I mean, there's a serious backlog, isn't it, at the moment, of all these fighters and boxers. And as you mentioned in one of our earlier podcasts, that these fighters don't get paid unless they're fighting.
Speaking obviously of Teofimo Lopez and Vasyl Lomachenko, again, Bob Arum, massive credit to him, gave us an update. Lomachenko had a few issues getting into the US, but according to Bob Arum, he has a green card which guarantees a permanent residency in the United States. Bob Arum's more or less come out and said that he prefers both these fights have a warm-up fight, but both fighters want to go straight into it. Likely date could be within these shows that Bob Arum's looking to push out, but he wants it to happen in September, and he wants it to happen in the MGM Grand. The MGM Grand, I believe, holds 15,000, but because he wants this to be the first show where the fans come back in to witness this live, he said that he wants the show to be spread out and to have at least 2,000 fans there. With the current situation of what's going on out there with the whole coronavirus pandemic, Asif, I mean, it's a question you might have the right answer, you might have the wrong answer for, but do you reckon boxing is going to be a sport where come September we'll get the fans back in watching it live, or is it going to be a case of it could take longer till September till we get the fans back watching these big fights live?
I can't see it happening in September. You know, if we're talking maybe July, where they start putting on these shows behind closed doors, that's 2 months away. You know, you look at the sports that are already going ahead. Can you see fans being back in stadiums in September for football? I can't. Same with UFC and that. I think it's going to take at least till maybe early next year till we start seeing fans back at sporting events.
I mean, I think one thing you just asked if you're currently watching the sports that are going ahead without the fans. I mean, I watched the UFC 249. I watched a bit of Bundesliga as well yesterday, and I have to say it's not as bad as people are making it out it is. I mean, at the end of the day, it's still live sports, it's still live action, it's still going ahead. And I thought UFC 249 was very good, and I actually have to give a lot of credit to the Bundesliga for going ahead. I think they've put on some great matches over the last few weeks, and they've just cracked on with it. But in terms of obviously that fight, Tefimo Lopez and Vasyl Lomachenko, Bob Arum stated that he wanted them both to have a warm-up fight, but both fights wouldn't go straight into it. Ron, with obviously them being out of the ring since this whole situation has happened, is that the right move or is that the wrong move?
I think for Tefimo Lopez, he's going up against one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in Lomachenko, isn't he? So it serves his best interest to have a warm-up fight. For Lomachenko, he's just like a well-drilled kind of machine, isn't he? With that with that amazing footwork, the array of skills that he displays in the boxing in the ring. So he's a polished professional, isn't he, Lomachenko? Mm-hmm. So, but fighters will be fighters. They'll feel that they can fight tomorrow if it was up to them. I mean, I've been following Tefimo Lopez on Instagram and his live feeds, and he looks like he's kept himself in shape. So, I mean, let's get the best fighting the best. Tefimo Lopez talks a good game. Mm-hmm. Let's see. We want a out-and-out champion in the lightweight division. We want to know who's number one. And there's also lots of other good fights in that division as well. Other lightweights there. We've got Devin Haney as well. We've got Gervonta Davis. So
King Ryan Garcia as well.
Yeah, Ryan Garcia. If you want to throw him in the mix, I say throw him in there. I mean, that would be a fight that would get people talking and really, because boxing's been on the back burner. I mean, like every other sport out there. How about we start off with a bang and then we go from there, really?
Asif, do you think it's the right move? I mean, because I look at it and I think Bob Arum's got a point. You don't want to see a lot of ring rust in there. You want to see them both at their best. You want to see them, on top of the game. I mean, if I was Lopez or Vasyl Lomachenko, I'd actually look at Bob Arum's point. I think, there's no harm in a warm-up fight. Yes, there's that chance of losing, but, at the back of their mind, and obviously the class that they both present, I don't see him losing a warm-up fight. But Asif, where do you stand on this whole warm-up fight kind of thing?
You made a point before about a backlog of fights. If someone was to have a warm-up fight, when will they fight next? You've got, how many fighters are we talking that haven't fought since this all started? They all have to fight, There's talk about Anthony Joshua just having the one fight for the year. You're looking at that kind of scenario, aren't you, where these big fighters now are not going to be fighting 2-3 times a year. It's probably going to be once in the next year. So although a warm-up fight sounds ideal, can it happen? I don't think it can. And these kind of fighters, like the Lomachenkos and that, how are they going to be after this kind of layoff going into these big fights? If you ever want to catch a big fighter off guard and, maybe have that slight advantage over him, this might be the ideal time.
It's good that you mentioned Anthony Joshua because, again, another interview we caught up with was Eddie Hearn's one. And he spoke about the Anthony Joshua Kubrat Pulev fight. So the destination of it being the new White Hart Lane Stadium is completely out of the window now. That's not going to happen. Eddie Hearn claims that they've had offers from the Far East, and he said that Croatia is another likely option. But Eddie Hearn has said that he'd like to see the fight in the UK. And it pushes me to the question that if we're not going to see it in White Hart Lane, where can we see it? I mean, are we looking at a potential O2 arena here, the MEN? I mean, where is the best location if this fight is going to happen in the UK? Me personally, I don't think it will happen in the UK, but if we have to come up with a venue, where would you guys like to see it?
If there's no crowd, if we're saying he's fighting this year, right? So he's fighting Pulev this year, and more than likely there's not going to be any fans at this event. It doesn't matter. I mean, just put a ring in his back garden like he's planning on doing. It doesn't matter because
as
exactly
Dillian Whyte suggested.
Yeah, or exactly in where they train, because it doesn't really matter about the crowd. White Hart Lane, Wembley Stadium, doesn't matter what the capacity is. They're not going to fill them. So listen, we just want to see these fights happen now, innit? And talks of it in other countries and that, I don't get it. I don't understand it, because there's going to be so much around rules and procedures.
Yeah, it's a lot of red tape, isn't it, that they'll have to kind of come through. Yeah, I agree.
But again, I think it's just them just trying to keep their names. I mean, not their names relevant, because Joshua's name doesn't need to be spoken about to be remembered. But it's just trying to keep these fights just relevant at the time.
I agree with you, Asif. I'm looking at it and thinking, why Croatia? But then again, I rewind it back to almost a year ago, Anthony Joshua fighting outside of the UK, and it all went horribly wrong. I think the best ideal scenario for this situation is perhaps maybe an O2 arena without the fans. You look at it, Anthony Joshua had some great nights at the O2 arena. That win over Dillian Whyte, he had a few fights on a couple of undercards there as well. Yes, it's without the fans, but, the O2 arena is a great venue for boxing. Ron, Sorry, go on, Asif.
I was going to say, look, the main fight everyone wants to see is Joshua and Fury. Okay, but then in the middle of it, you've got Joshua Pulev and Fury and Wilder. Those are the obstacles in the way to get to them fights. So get these two fights out of the way. Get the Joshua and Pulev fight out of the way. It doesn't matter where it is. Get it done. Tick the box. Get the Wilder and Fury 3 done. And then next year, when the fans can play a part in the event, then get that big, massive fight on in the UK. That should be the plan for these lot. Let's just get them, these two fights done, tick the boxes, and plan for next year, and give us something really to look forward to.
You see, where you say that, but you have to look at it. The third fight with Wilder versus Fury, yes, Tyson Fury is the odds-on favourite, and yes, you would say Anthony Joshua is the odds-on favourite to beat Kubrat Pulev, but this is heavyweight boxing. Now, if either one of those fighters loses their fights with the Wilder and Pulev, that fight is up in smoke. You'd have to wait a long time to see that fight. I think now, I mean, don't get me wrong, I agree with you. This is the biggest fight out there, and this would generate a lot of money, and this is the one that the fans want to see the most. But personally, I think if you're going to make that fight happen, make it happen now, because it's more easier to make the fight happen now. Yes, you want the fans there, but you look at it, Deontay Wilder is, I'm hearing rumours of an injury. Kubrat Pulev, I think Bob Arum said, doesn't have an issue with stepping aside as long as he does get his title shot after that fight. Does it not make sense to make that fight happen now? Because you've got Wilder, who's currently nursing an injury and who's saying he's willing to step aside and take a step aside fee. And then you've got Kubrat Pulev, who's saying as long as he gets that shot after that fight, then it's not an issue.
Sorry, bro. I was going to say, look, let's talk about it from fans' point of view. Yeah, we're free fans from the UK. Yeah, you've got the biggest fight potentially in history of boxing, Fury versus AJ. It's not just an event. It's not just a fight. It's a spectacle. The build-up, the press conferences, the workouts, the public workouts, everything. If you put that fight on now, all that gets. You will be seeing Joshua and Fury have press conferences through Zoom, or they're sitting on 4 meters apart or 6 meters apart. It just takes away all that hype, that excitement away from the fight without the fans. So I think, look, it's perfect timing now to get these other two fights out of the way. I know you say it's heavyweight boxing and anything can happen, but these guys know the main fight, the money fight, the legacy fight is Joshua versus Fury. So I think they'll be on it more than ever. Get them fights out of the way, and let's move on to the big one.
Just touching on that, I think if Wilder was to step aside, where does he go from there? I mean, he was the WBC title holder for how many defenses did he make? I lost count. Amount of bums that he fought, and then the odd, tough fight that you would have. Now, if he was to step aside, how long is it going to take him? But how long is it going to take him to get an actual shot at the title? Again,
you got to look at it. Right?
But then you got Pulev, who was supposed to fight Joshua beforehand.
In 2017, many years ago,
but then he had the injury. This is an opportunity that he's been waiting for a long period of time for a title shot. So, and he's mandatory. He's a mandatory as well, and he can't. Pulev could just kind of put his feet into the sand and say, no, I'm not going anywhere, and then Joshua would have to relinquish that title. And then that fight between him and Fury, as good as attractive as that is, I'm just kind of thinking of it another perspective is, well, it's not for all the marbles. It's minus the IBF, I think it is. Yeah. So look, I think they need to get these out of the way. I mean, we're hearing a lot from about Wilder. Is he fit? Is he going to take the 10 million? But if he kind of takes some money, what does that say about Wilder? It's what about his legacy?
If Wilder's 100%, if he's not 100% fit, there's no way he should be taking this fight. Absolutely no way. Because Wilder loses this third fight, and he's more or less done.
How the hell is he getting injured in lockdown? They're not sparring
after
or anything.
That fight against Fury, he picked up a shoulder injury or something. I think that was it.
I think the best solution to this is get Fury and Joshua to hold out till December, see what the situation's like then. If you've got boxing back to where it is, where you've got the fans that are allowed there, you've got press conferences, public workouts, make it in December. Take it to the Far East, make it the biggest fight, probably one of the biggest heavyweight fights of all time. But I do think now this is the best chance to make that fight, because you got to look at it from this point of view. If Fury beats Wilder, Dillian Whyte is the number one mandatory for that WBC belt and has been roughly since 2017. And that's another fight that's not going away. And, as much as we want to see the Fury-AJ fight, you cannot knock Dillian Whyte. He deserves a chance at the world title. And if anyone deserves a world title shot tomorrow, it's Dillian Whyte. Well, regardless of what anyone's opinion on Dillian Whyte is, he deserves a shot at the world title. And I think
they should make a new heavyweight division up, or a heavyweight title up just for Dillian Whyte. Because we've had all this talk, about Fury, Joshua, Pulev.
Hasn't he got a belt? Guy. Dillian Whyte, he's got a silver belt or something, hasn't he?
Yeah, but you know what he wants. He wants the world title, and
of course he wants. He wants the actual, the real thing, real McCoy, rather than a knockoff version of it.
I could probably see Dillian Whyte becoming the UFC heavyweight champion than the boxing heavyweight champion.
Well, that's what we're going to move on to in a bit. Obviously, he talks about Dillian Whyte versus Francis Ngannou. That's one of our topics we're going to talk about. But Asif, you mentioned the whole back garden of Eddie Hearn. He said he's looking at the idea of bringing boxing back to the UK by hosting fights in his back garden, the Matchroom headquarters, looking at some of the pictures and some of the ideas they've got behind it. I don't think it's a bad idea.
No, I saw an interview he done on his live Instagram, and he showed we call it back garden, but it's like it's crazy. It's like, it's a massive, they could host anything there. But yeah, what position to be in, where you can literally go and put fights on in your back garden, but there's going to be a lot of rules around it, a lot of regulations around it. But like I keep saying, and I know I've said it a few times, they've got the perfect thing to copy, which is UFC. They just look at what they've done right, what they've done wrong. He seems to have a decent relationship with Dana White. So yeah, if that's what it takes to get some fights on, then so be it.
Lots of talks with Dana White as well. according to Eddie Hearn, and he said that they're looking at the possibility of doing like a mixed show where it's half UFC and half boxing, and that's again something I'd like to see. That's something we discussed in our last episode of Boxing Talk with the Sugarman Shane Mosley Jr. Link is below in the video, so make sure you go check that out. But Ron, boxing in your back garden, would you be all for it, or is it something that you think, wait, hold on a second, like, come on, this your back garden we're talking about, let's just, I know it's going to be without the fans, but let's at least put in the stadium, not a back garden. What's your take on it?
What's the alternative? I mean, how else are we?
I think the biggest sorry, Ron, to disturb you. The biggest stumbling block in this is that they have to stay within. They have to stay from Wednesday onwards to the fight in the actual whole area. I think that's a bit of a stumbling block.
And that's, sorry, I was going to say that's in a hotel which Eddie Hearn owns, a hotel which is just down the road. So it's all
yeah, I mean, look, there's something that needs to be accommodated for, considering the times that we're going through. Just talking about another sport here, cricket. Now, Pakistan and England have agreed on a potential series, and they're going to be cooped up for 3 months. They're going to be going to a series. They're going to be coming to England. They're going to be isolated from the rest of the world for 2 weeks, and they're going to be kept in ice. You know, it's like a bionic chamber or something. That's what I'm being told. I mean, it's only for a few days. It's not like as extreme as that, as the cricket situation. But look, I mean, like I said earlier, there is no alternative. We need to be safe. These are, professional athletes who are putting their lives and their healths on, at risk here for our entertainment. I mean, some footballers have said no. These boxers and fights can say no, but they choose, if they want to fight, this is how we've got to do it.
I mean, it's an interesting one. You got to give credit to Eddie Hearn for even trying to make it happen. He's obviously, there's a few risks involved for him as well, and for the people that be working around closely with him. But personally, do I want to see it? Yeah, I'd be up for seeing it. I mean, who knows? It might turn out to be a good thing. One thing's for sure, we just want to see boxing back on Saturday nights again. Last topic we'll talk about, obviously, on the podcast is something that we mentioned previously, was Dillian Whyte and Francis Ngannou. Now, this is getting so much publicity. I mean, as the weeks have gone by, it's becoming a really popular topic. Francis Ngannou says he's open to a boxing fight, and he reckons Dillian Whyte's a top heavyweight, but he can see him knocking him out. I mean, fair enough. It sounds quite respectful saying that. He's saying he believes he can beat Dillian Whyte, but Dillian Whyte, on the other hand, responded with, Ngannou is dumber than he sounds. If he thinks he's going to win anything in boxing, if he thinks he's going to turn up to fight me like he did against Derek Lewis, I'd hurt him and knock him clean out. If I called him a potato, it would be a compliment to him. It reminds me of that other deluded coward, Deontay Wilder. Quite frankly, that's definitely Dillian Whyte talk for me. What you know of Dillian Whyte, I wouldn't have put anything past him of saying that. Do we want to see it? After the money fight in 2017, do we want to see boxing and UFC come together again?
I feel this is slightly different because Dillian Whyte obviously has that UFC, that MMA background. And Francis, I'm not even going to try and pronounce his second name because I've tried before and I've failed at it. But I'm going to call him Francis. He's, in terms of a MMA fighter, he's a stand-up fighter, which you could say the same, which was like Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather, but he's just stand-up. You never see this guy on the floor. Because Dillian Whyte's got that MMA experience, would I like to see it happen? I think Dillian Whyte deserves anything. He deserves everything. What he's been through in the boxing world, he deserves his shot to go and try out in MMA and fight him. So, yeah, I'd love to see it because it'd make for a massive, massive fight. They're both hard hitters. That Francis guy, man, I see his last fight. He literally got chinned about 2 times, but it was just he just walked straight through him and caught the guy. He didn't even catch him flush on, half. It was like 50% connection, and he just knocked the guy clean out. So I think it'd be a massive fight.
Ron, where are you with this whole White versus Ngannou thing?
No.
Okay.
Look, boxing and UFC, they're two completely different sports. You know, expecting someone, I mean, with MMA fighters, they do train boxing. You know, they do learn a bit of boxing, but it's not 100%. You know, they need to have it or be expert of boxing, because obviously there's other kind of skills that they need to know of. You know, kind of he's stepping into Dillian Whyte's world. Dillian Whyte can just keep him at arm's length, box him off, use his footwork. Now, if it was a UFC fight, then it's a different ball game. You know, obviously. I mean, look, if you remember that Mayweather and McGregor fight, it just looked odd. You know. With McGregor kind of throwing punches, he just didn't look like a boxer. But that's because of a number of things. You know, striking is quite different in MMA, and secondly, it's the gloves that they wear as well. You know, what they wear. I think in MMA they wear 4-ounce gloves, and in boxing they wear, is it 10-ounce? Yeah. So there's a couple of things. I mean, I wouldn't be in favour of it. I think it's a celebrity it's a stunt to get attention. You know, they're both bored. They're both waiting for their respective fights to kind of happen, if they do happen. So, no. I mean, I didn't really enjoy that McGregor-Mayweather fight. I don't want to see a repeat of that again. So,
well,
yeah, definitely not in a boxing ring. I wouldn't want to see in a boxing ring, because it'd be so one-sided. But in an MMA ring, in the octagon, I think Dillian Whyte's got. I think he's got a massive chance of.
I think Dillian Whyte's got Muay Thai or kickboxing. I think that's his background. I'm not sure if it's MMA as such, his background, but we know with Dillian Whyte, he's a brawler. You know, he's not gonna stand down to anybody. You know, that's why we love him. I mean, he'll fight anyone. You know, we've seen his opponents that he's had in the last. I mean, who hasn't he fought? And we're still shocked that he hasn't got a world title shot.
I was looking at it the other day and I was thinking, not for me, but now, because of the potential build-up and because of the noise it's causing, it is something I would like to see. I personally, I'm with Asif as well. I'd love to see it happen in the octagon, just because Dillian Whyte's got a bit of experience in there. And I think, as Conor McGregor found out, UFC and boxing are two total different sports. So why not let boxing go to UFC this time? And it's again, there's so much that we could potentially be seeing right now, but we're just missing out on due to this whole crap situation that we're going through. But hopefully we pray for better days, and hopefully we get these big fights happening. And of course, the viewers out there need to let us know what they think in the comment section. That's all we've got time for of podcast 11 on the Lights Out Boxing podcast. Asif and Ron, thank you guys as always. A pleasure for having you on. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you're following us on all the social media platforms. And turn the bell on for your notifications as well, so you get all the regular updates. And check out our previous uploads. I'm Faisal Khan. Thank you for listening to podcast 11 of the Lights Out Boxing podcast.